welcome back to another show. Today I'm going to talk about sci-fi movies of the 50s and 60s, or specific ones which are like the hard sci-fi, in theory, of this era. So it's not like Forbidden Planet or This Island Earth, which took some sci-fi and then became much more fantastical, even though they're the better respected of the genre. These are the ones that try to show realism, even though there's plenty of howlers for science. There's so many howlers in some of these films, it's insane. So I'm going to look at Destination Moon, When Worlds Collide, Conquest of Space, Colossus of New York, and Robinson Crusoe on Mars. So quite a few of these were produced by George Powell, not all of them. Quite a few were directed by Byron Haskin, but not all of them. But there was one type of sci-fi that wasn't doing the giant monster thing that like tarantula and things like that. It wasn't doing that. It wasn't doing the alien invasion thing like it came from outer space. It wasn't doing the Quatermass thing that was the more intelligent version of the whole thing. It was doing the patriotic we shall go to space thing, or it was doing the what would happen if a man becomes a giant robot thing. It was that thing, was taking an idea of what the hard science fiction was doing and then put it onto film. So that's the thing, but it was also very pulpy, and it, as I said, it got a lot wrong. Sometimes there were real howlers for scientific knowledge of things that even then they should have known. Even then, if they'd actually asked like proper scientists, they'd be like, no, don't do that, that's stupid. It's like there's some real howlers here in science, but well, we'll get on to that. Right, so the first one is Destination Moon. This is the one that started the whole thing up. This was a George Powell production. It was low budget for a studio film, but it was big budget compared to other sci-fi movies at the time. And there was one called Rocketship 11XB or something like that. It was with Lloyd Bridges. It was much cheaper, that came out at the same time. And according to a lot of people, it was more fun than Destination Moon. I haven't seen it, so I can't say. But Destination Moon is a weird film in the sense of, it's trying to be serious. And you could be bored by quite a lot of it. And it's very right-wing and patriotic. There's so many things there that you could question. But I still enjoyed it. So basically the idea is, this is during the Cold War where there's a Russian under every bed type of thing, and a NASA test, or not, it was just before NASA, but a space test is blown up as it takes off, and they think it's sabotage, and a lot of the ideas for space are now under threat. Now, a bunch of patriotic businessmen decide they're going to go to the moon because whoever lands on the moon first will have the rights to the moon, and whoever has the rights to the moon can create a whole missile system on the moon that could hit the Earth and have total domination. That's the theory they're going with. I'm not sure if even then they realised how expensive it would be to actually take nuclear weapons to the moon and then fire them and have them hit accurately, because the moon can only aim at a place that's going over at the time. So they'd have to wait for the right orbit before that would be effective. I'm sure it's a lot easier with satellites, but with firing from the moon, it doesn't feel like it, especially in 50s with 50s nuclear weapons. When they just discovered nuclear weapons, it was like, I don't think that is a realistic fear, but it was something they were talking about in science, and so it was a future fear. So that's a motivation to get these businessmen, because the government can't do their damn job and do this. So the business community has to do it, and damn it, all these lefties are trying to stop it with the laws and things like you can't use a nuclear powered engine in America to test out the first time to take off and try and hit the moon. these pesky people are wanting you to try a test on the sea first. And that could lose you months. And it's okay, the scientists have moved them beyond below the... No one's going to be below the rocket as it takes off. They've been moved to a safe distance, which will still give you radiation poisoning if it went off. If not, instant death. So it's like, okay. So some of this stuff's a bit... From what we know now, some of this stuff's dodgy as hell. And even then, probably some scientists will be going, really? That's not a good sign to do that. So that's the general idea is these brave scientists are going to take off and go to the moon. Now, it was written by Robert Heinlein, who was a science fiction author who's very right-wing and very pro-American, very pro-libertarianism. He once got a spat with his old pal Arthur C. Clarke, who said, maybe this Star Wars idea is not a good idea. Maybe it's going to make more trouble than it's worth. You know, that's in the 80s, and Heinlein was like, went mad on him. And even though Arthur Clarke was like, this is not a good idea. Using satellites for that is not a good idea. Because it's not. But this is this right-wing conspiracy thing. But I think they were the only scientists the producers could afford to get. So they got him to... So they created this libertarian wet dream of conquering space. And have a rocket ship that... You know... And by the way, the special effects to take off are just as convincing me going... You know, it's a model. You know, this was still a limited budget. It was a model. So, the thing takes off, and that's when the film gets a lot better. Once you're actually in space, the film gets better because it's about the dangers of going into space and dangers of actually using science in space and having to, like, they have to go outside and do a EVA because of they didn't tell one of the guys not to use a certain substance on one mechanism, and it's actually stuck. So have to clean it off because no one told them that you can't use that in space. So that's like one of those things is like something they would use on Earth, and it's what you need to oil something to make it work, but just freeze in space and be a problem. So it's that thing of once you get into space, it's like these are the actual problems of space. It's not. So you have to wear like metal boots so you can walk, and there's no gravity, and you have to adjust to things, and you could get blown. You could easily lose track of where you are. If you fall off the rocket, you're dead because there's no way to get back. But someone falls off the rocket and have to invent a way to get them back before you're too far away from them. The idea that you always feel you're not moving, even though you're moving like 2,000 miles an hour. You know, it's that thing of like the kind of what you perceive and what's the reality of it, and also just the limitations, and this is a very dangerous mission. And essentially they get there, but because they land in the wrong place, the wrong angle, they do some damage to their fuel supply. They've only so much fuel, and it's like, will they have enough fuel to take back off? Because once they get there and head to Earth, they'll be fine. But they need to get off the moon, and it's like trying to cut down the weight on the ship to actually use what fuel they've got left to actually take off. And it's also the danger of trying to land on the moon when it's much more dangerous than it looks, and which turns out the moon's not as dangerous as that. Turns out there's lots of flat space in the moon you can land on, and it's fine. But for dramatic purposes, they needed to make it seem a bit more, you know, scary. So they make it a bit more scary, but it creates a drama for what happens next. But even then, the scientists were like, "This moon doesn't look like the moon." We've got telescopes; it doesn't look that way. All these big mountains, these craggy rocks. That's not the moon. We need to look cool. Shut up. But it actually does work. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there. Basically, once we get off the ground and they stop the libertarian shit, the film gets a lot better. And you're no longer in this kind of 1950s paranoia central, situation where, where big business can fund the entire thing, and government's useless, and it's like, okay, so with those nuts, even then, of course, those nuts all the time, they'll be never ending. So they get to the moon, they have to find a way to get back. They think they have to leave someone behind, but they find a way ultimately to not do that. And it's an enjoyable film once the suspense stuff gets going. The problem is it's a 50s film where the science takes over from the characters. The characters are very bland and dull, and you can't tell. There's a doctor and I'm lead of the mission, and both actors look and act very similar, so sometimes you can't tell. Like, that's a doctor, isn't it? Yeah, that's a doctor. Oh, that the lead guy. Oh, right. It's like, why do you cast two people that look the same, are very similar, and have the same personality? It's like just basic stuff like that, and they even color code the costumes so that one's red, one's yellow, one's blue, and one's purple, and it's even then you can't tell between two of them because they look the same. The actors look the same. But it's still an enjoyable film. I'd still happily rewatch it because I like that kind of science, 50 science stuff. You know, you just have to ignore some of the politics. But it's not that private business doesn't do space stuff. Elon Musk's doing just now. But the idea of it just being the only solution when we know later on that it was government who funded it, not the big business. Big business got profited from it. Next is When Worlds Collide, which is another George Powell production. This is when he had a big success with Destination Moon, and I think War of the Worlds had come out at that point, so he was rolling at that point, and he was actually doing well, so he could finance a film that was a mega budget for the time, for the genre, because science fiction 50s was not mega budget films, but you could go mega budget in comparison to other science fiction films. And that's what that film had. You know, it wasn't Ten Commandments budget. It wasn't like a Marlon Brando film budget. It was, for a studio, it was fairly low budget. For a sci-fi movie, it was a studio film, so it was fairly high budget. So you get the pluses and the minuses of this, where you're not going to get some of the crazier stuff you get in a low budget sci-fi movie. But what you do get is some decent production design. But you also have to get like a lot of God stuff, because God believes in humanity to survive, even though God has caused all these problems to test humanity. That's that thing. It's basically a Noah's Ark thing where a big, you be two different planetary fields coming towards the Earth. Like two big things. One will skim by and cause like lots of problems, and another one will hit direct and kill everybody. So it's like, well, what do we do once they find out this is real? And for some reason they've missed it, even though and there's a top secret thing of someone taking information from one place to the other. For some reason missed it until it's almost too late. That's the trope of sci-fi movies. It's like we can't see things till it's almost too late for the plot to work. We can't see it decades in advance, even though it's moving slowly through space. We can't do that. So the guy who takes a message gets involved in the thing because he's a pilot, and so he goes and helps all these people like fly around and start helping the people organising the escape thing to basically set it up. So he's a central character. So he starts out as being a bit off himself, but as he realises what's going on with humanity, he becomes a lot more selfless and becomes a noble creature of humanity by the end of the film. He falls in love with a woman who's the daughter of the guy trying to organise it. That is actually fine. The romance in this film's fine. Normally the romance in these films are awful. But in this one it's fine. It's like she's doing her thing, he's doing his thing, and have a romance in between. But they're still both doing their jobs, so it makes it a lot easier to take. It's not like she's waiting for him to do anything at any point. And the film is basically about to build this big rocket ship, and so it can take off. This is basically 2012 basically did this movie, remade it. 2012 was basically a remake of this movie, but instead of leaving the planet, not one, they just create a ship that's going to survive the massive floods. So in this one, they find another planet somewhere that they're going to fly to in the rocket ship. God knows what that is. As I said, these films are scientific to a degree, and then they become less scientific because it gets in the way of the plot. So it's about them building the thing, trying to get people to invest in it because a lot of people don't believe it at first. Then when they realise it's actually true, because the world government say no, that's not true, with other scientists saying it's not true, and every time they realise it is true, it's a bit late. But they have to keep on building these things anyway, and private business has to come in and build them as long as they get places on the thing. It's all very tacky. It's like, no, human beings would actually do this, not big business. But again, the libertarian thing is like the people seem to love American business further. This was after like the first half of the century, American business had exploded and had been doing lots of stuff. Then depression came, and now it's come back, and it's like, oh, how good we're going to be, and blah blah blah. So it's about propaganda for American business, but even though in reality we know that's bullshit. So they create this thing. Apparently they're going to do tons of them, but so you get a lot of scenes with lead character going, helping them out, and also going around and trying to save people from various disasters that are affecting the planet. And basically, it's about him developing the faith in humanity to try and help them do this thing. See, he's actually helping them out and saying, I'm not going on a mission, you need the best, and I'm not the best. And it's him being forced to realise they need him to help fly the ship, ultimately, because he knows the ship as well as the other pilot, and they need two pilots. In case one of them say, they lie to him and say the other one has a medical condition, means they may black out, even though that's a lie. But they actually do need two pilots just to make sure that if something happens to one, you need another one. So he ends up getting on the ship. The rich guy who funds it ends up getting left behind because he's a dick. A lot of people who are helping build the ship end up rioting when they realise that they're going to be left behind to die, even though they knew that was the option. So the idea of humanity as most desperate can be the greatest and the worst thing. It's an enjoyable bit of pulp. That's what it is. It's a fun movie. I enjoyed the hell out of it. The end's completely ridiculous as they find another planet and it's like almost a paradise to start again. And it's like, okay, I'll give you 2 weeks before you start fighting. So that's when Earth collides. Well, when worlds collide. Very enjoyable. And as someone's pointed out, the one thing that's missing in this film is you don't see the worlds collide. You see it in a video thing, but you don't actually see the... You see it in a poster. They couldn't do it in the film itself, though. Right, next is Conquest of Space. Conquest of Space is... this was George Pal going back to Destination Moon type of thing. After he did his big success with Destination Moon, War of the Worlds, when Worlds Collide, he went back to do another, like, supposed scientific, accurate film. This time going to Mars. This one was not a success, and it was a film that even the people involved in it didn't think was going to work because it was just like there's lots of melodrama that was just piled on, and you get feeling there was a ton of scripts just squashed together and tons of different things, and no one had really made a way to work this thing out as a drama because you had lots of scientific things like there's a centrifugal space station that 2001 would do later properly. Now this is a theory from the 30s, so they're just taking what everyone thought you had to do in space to make it gravity work. So this is not invented. This was just taking not what we knowledge of. And you had all this thing with people eating special food to prepare for a long mission, which was a big science fiction thing of the day. Because how do you compress food supply to get you from there and back? And it's just making food like paste rather than proper food because that's all you can really stock. So things like that are the plan, and you're getting these people getting used to doing that. And then halfway through the film, there was a few little disasters here or there. There's some tensions between the commanding officer and his son, which the director objected to because he thought it was just very kind of stock. Then as it wants to go on a mission, the commander who has a condition which is he's not telling him about because he's just because basically his idea is he's going to get the space station set up and then he can go back home, and they'll go and do their mission. He's just trying to get it set up and he's just trying to ride this out and then he goes home and can deal with his condition. Then he's ordered to go on the mission, to lead the mission. And he doesn't tell them, look, I'm ill. I cannot do it. Physically can't do it. He goes on the mission. His condition creates a thing where he goes to go mad and becomes very religious and thinks human beings are a disease and they should never leave the Earth because they've been trapped on Earth and things. So he becomes a problem. He has his best pal who goes with him, even though he has to sneak on the mission, which is in no way can be read as a gay relationship or a suppressed gay relationship, even though that's what it screams out to for modern day. There's a bunch of other people who are all kind of the best of the best, but they have no personality. And of all these scientific things have worked out, but it's basically Destination Moon again. They go to the other planet, things go wrong, they have to find a way to get the ship off the planet again to get home. It's basically the same plot, but having the first third in space rather on Earth, and actually have them, they've established stuff in space, and then later on, just having more gadgets and more of a budget, but having less of a story. So it's the kind of least satisfying of these films. Even though I still enjoyed it, but this is where the films start to get ridiculous. So they go to Mars and they have the helmets on, but their hands are free of gloves, that doesn't work. Who was a scientific advisor here? And there's lots of things about things growing on Mars and things that aren't really explained very well. It looks all very pretty. I mean, Mars looks pretty as well, and it's very nice pulp stuff going on. But it's scientifically a bit dodgy, and lots of some of the effects are really dodgy. I don't think they even look good at the time, to be honest. I think sometimes it was like the budget got the better of them. But it's still a fun movie, but if you've got a choice, watch Destination Moon. It's a better film. Now we have Colossus of New York, which is the best of the bunch. It's a black and white film. It's the lowest budget film, made for almost nothing. And it does have some annoying characters, and there are some clunky things in it. But it's still a good idea. We're based on a scientist who everyone thinks is going to be the next Einstein. He's going to be the guy who's working on creating new food supplies. He's working on just simply making the world a better place. And then he gets run down by a car. He's trying to get a balloon for his son. And it's like, oh god, this genius has died. Just when he was about to peak and move up, and do amazing things. It's like, what do we do? Well, they bury him, but the father steals the brain, thinking this brain cannot die, this brain's still alive, this brain can still teach us so much. So they create a robot, him and his son create a robot for the other guy from family. And, the father's missing his son, the brother's missing his brother. But there are tensions between them because the other son the son is okay, but he's not the greatest. Even though the brother who died always kept him in and always relied on him, he's still the son he's not the apple of the father's eye, put it that way. And no one expects him to do that anything great. So he gets dragged along. So the wife and the son of the dead scientist stay in the same house, but they don't know what's going on as they build this robot. The robot works, but as the robot starts to work, it becomes this thing where it gets more powerful, which is dangerous, but also It's a brain without a body. It's a brain in a metal shell, and as it goes on, it's doing what the scientists asked, which is helping create new food and things like that. And it's doing tons of great stuff. And they're passing off some of the ideas as things the guy was working on before he died, and we're just publishing them now in honour of him, even though he's doing this after he's died. But at a certain point, the metal part of him, basically the coldness of the shell, makes him question, why am I doing this for humanity? They're not really me anymore. And it becomes this thing where he starts to slowly go mad and become much colder and nastier to people. And all he's really interested in is make sure his son's okay. That's the only bit that's tied him back to humanity. For the rest of the time, he's becoming less and less human, less and less tied to human concerns. And it's a nice little movie. It's a B movie. It's 80 minutes long, and it works well. Some black and white. You have some nice things where, because they don't have that much money, they have to use shadows and be subtle with some of the stuff to create an impression, and that works. So when they need to use a robot properly, they'll use it, but a lot of time they'll use shadows. So there's a lot of things in here that really work. I mean, there are a few gaffes. There's a point where someone gets killed. You see the body on screen, then you see them killed, then you see the body again. And it's obviously an editing mistake that no one spotted. But generally, it's a fun film. It really works for what it is. It's a fun little sci-fi movie. I mean, obviously, Robocop was influenced a little bit by it. But Robocop took the more humane route. But this one is just the idea is, the argument is, can mind survive without their bodies? And it's that mind-body schism thing that people were talking about, so they take it to the sci-fi extreme. And it works. I would definitely recommend trying to see the last one. 80 minutes, works beautifully. Finally, we have Robinson Crusoe on Mars, which is the most schizo of all these films. Basically, the worst part of the film is the opening 20 minutes. This bit, I was always ready to turn it off because it was a try to do the kind of thing of a guy's crashed on Mars. There's a problem with his ship. He's crashed on Mars. He doesn't know what's happening to anyone else, and they had to do all the mechanics of what's going on. But it's not. This is directed by Byron Haston, who did When Worlds Collide and War of the Worlds. And it is a kind of, the first thing is a silent movie. But the problem with him is, he's a good director and great at visuals, but he hasn't established a human being before this happens. So you just watch a guy you don't know do these things, and yeah, you want him to survive, but you're not that invested because you don't know the guy. So it's a basic screenwriting problem. You spend the first 5 minutes with Adam West as a commander, who you don't see again for apart from one scene in the film. This other guy who you basically got to know for a second is now your protagonist. And it just creates this thing of, I'm not invested. I don't care. There's some really pretty shots, some stuff with I mean, scientifically this film is nonsense, but it is gorgeous pulp. And basically it was some guy dropped on a planet that's not Mars, a planet from somewhere else in space. Perfectly acceptable sci-fi thing. They could have just said this is a space thing from another solar system, and it would have worked a lot better. Because we know what Mars is, it doesn't work so well. So for example, he can open his visor and breathe the air for a little bit, then have to use his own air again. And that's like, no, you'll be dead. But for you doing this, he extends his air supply for a while. He finds water. He finds the escape pod of Adam West's character, and he's dead. But he finds a monkey there who was there for tests, and the monkey can breathe in the atmosphere fine. And slowly, once the suit comes off and he finds water, and he finds out these rocks, if you actually boil, they release air, and you can breathe that. And he finds ways to extend his air supply, and he actually finds a way to survive on this planet. And all that stuff works. As soon as his helmet's off and he's dealing with things and you can see his face, the film works a lot better. Because you start to get to know who this guy actually is, which is a big problem early on. He's like, it's just a guy in a spacesuit. You don't know who he is. It's just pretty visuals. Because it's Robinson Crusoe on Mars, he ends up getting his own man Friday, who's this guy who's a slave to these other aliens who are mining in this area. This guy escapes, meets up with our hero, and they slowly learn each other's language. They start to bond, and they become friends. And also, they have to go on the run from these alien creatures who are hunting them down, because this guy's got these things in his wrists which they can track, so they have to try and get rid of them. So eventually they do, and they go on these. They have to go through underground canals, the famous Martian canals, which create some really beautiful matte paintings. They have to go to the polar ice caps to try and find water at a certain point to escape from the Martians, and they're almost freeze to death. There are these things flying over the surface, these different meteors. One of them crashes right near them, helps melt the ice caps, which gives them more water. But also, that's the thing that ends up getting them rescued, because the rescue ships arrive and investigate the situation, and because they've still got a radio, they manage to say, "Hey, we're here, help." So, I mean, once it gets sillier, it works a lot better. The bit where it's trying to be serious doesn't work so well, but as soon as it actually gets to the thing of, okay, we're out of the spacesuit, and we're seeing human beings in this, trying to survive on this planet. If you know the fact it's meant to be Mars, what's perfect? And, you know, it just does. It just works as nicely as a story. It just, this Robinson Crusoe done as a sci-fi movie. It works nicely. There are plenty of plot holes if you want to find them, but I never really get that bothered. It was just, I was enjoying it once we got to know the characters a little bit and see who they were. But it was just that early thing. It's the thing that sci-fi movies in the 50s seem to ignore, was the fact that you need characters you like. You know, it really helps. The best science fiction movies had characters you could follow. The ones that didn't work so well were just these cold, monotone guys who were very military, and there's like, I can't follow you, you're not identifiable. So that's the problem this film has to start with, but it gets through that and becomes a fun genre film. Just ignore the fact it's meant to be Mars. That's the only thing I would say is his big defect. Because once you see it as a planet with air, but it's a different type, the air's kind of slightly different from what we're used to, and you need to find other ways to enhance your air supply to have your body process that air. Then it becomes a problem. Then it becomes more workable. So I hope you enjoyed look at these 5 films. I hope I get you to watch a few of them. I mean, you can probably skip Conquest of Space, but the rest of them are all enjoyable. So that's me for now. I'll see you all later. Bye for now.